Moving on into the facial recognition component, we hear more and more about this technology being deployed. We'll talk briefly about it here in the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll bring Josh Johnson on to answer some questions around it.
Facial recognition is a biometric technology that maps attributes of a person's face, and then it compares and contrasts that information with images stored on a database. In the last 20 years, this has gone from Hollywood sci-fi tech to something that almost everybody has in their hands with things like Face ID. Operationally, it's applied in terms of either a recognized face or an unrecognized face, and that's an important distinction. When your phone recognizes your face, it unlocks the device. Similarly, when your security camera recognizes you, we can have that trigger a set of actions. Pretty much whatever you can think of. We can trigger outputs from that, we can send emails, we can send an alarm, we can turn a light on or off, an indicator light. Pretty much if you can think of it, we can do it. Facial recognition is a powerful tool and we believe should augment your existing security system and not replace it. There's still some areas within your building where you want to have the highest level of security, and that's a card is going to be the best thing for that. But there may be other areas where you could loosen things up a little bit and use something like this to validate that the people that are supposed to be there are there and that people that aren't are not. Lots of businesses have areas within their organization that only certain people should be there. You could use this technology to notify you if somebody that's not supposed to be there is in that area, whether that be an alert through email or a text to your phone, you can know right away. So you could also use this technology in a busy lobby where your employees go through and get a literal green light and non-employees are flagged and have to go through a sign-in process. This doesn't necessarily need to be deployed in terms of surveilling people. You could use the facial recognition to inform an employee that a VIP or a C-suite employee has arrived on site and then dispatch somebody to go meet them and kind of roll out the red carpet, if you will. The technology itself has the ability to read from 45 degrees to the left or the right, or 30 degrees up or down. So you don't necessarily have to have somebody straight on with the camera in order to detect their face. This is used as a form of credential in the same way that your driver's license proves that you are who you are. In the same way that that card badge you hold that buzzes you into the door proves that you are that person. It's a form of credential that's used to validate your identity. We leverage this as a tool to increase our awareness and to help make our lives easier.
Great. Moving forward to the facial recognition question and answer section, I'm going to be bringing on Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson is another pre-sales engineer with our physical security solutions, has been very involved in camera selections, camera management, software selections, being able to navigate the waters, making sure we understand what the specific requirements are and what technologies would be able to meet those. So Josh, to start this out, I have a question for you around how does the system know the face? Does it learn them, or is there some other method that it uses to know which faces to detect?
Oh, great question. So basically, you've got a database with images stored on it, and you put those images on the database. It's not like some all-knowing computer that figures it out on its own. You determine which images you want on the database. The camera collects images and compares to those and then gives you information based off that comparison.
Great. So a follow-up question to that, in the age of COVID and I mean other things, masks being worn and glasses, is it able to look at faces and recognize them with things like masks, eyeglasses, beards, changes like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even going back to like an older passport photo as one of the reference images, it will recognize you. Obviously, you put a mask on, the accuracy is going to go down. We did some experimentation here with that, and once we added an image for the reference with wearing a mask, it suddenly was able to detect with a much higher accuracy. So again, there's some setup involved, but it can work with a mask on. And sunglasses, or even if it's a photo is aged, aged a few years, grown a beard, maybe a cool mustache.
Love it. Question here around integration of this. How does this integrate with Video Insight?
It's a great question. So basically what you're looking to do is trigger a notification into the software. And again, based on whether it's a recognized or an unrecognized face, you can get an alert, and then sort of you determine at that point, what you want to do with that information, right? You've got the alert, the notification that you've got a match or that it doesn't match. It's an important distinction, and then you determine where to go from there. But certainly as an alert or an alarm, email or a text, again, integration can kind of go as far as you want to with it. But in Video Insight, it would definitely be something that would show up as a notification or an alert as a starting point, and you can go from there.
So it's able to integrate into Video Insight, also able to integrate into Genetec. So you can operate it from a standalone perspective if you don't have those platforms, or potentially pull it into your specific VMS. So, great questions. If you have specific VMSs, we can help navigate those waters as to the best way to deploy it. From a design perspective, as you're looking at an environment, you talked a little bit about kind of the angles of view, et cetera. How do you typically design these systems, and what do you need to be considering from an environmental perspective?
Yeah, great question. So when we deploy this, you have similar to the way we would deploy an entrance camera, something that, when you walk into a building, you've got a nice clear shot of somebody entering into your facility. Similar type of positioning you'd want with a facial recognition camera. It doesn't necessarily need to be a dedicated camera too, or, tying back to your comments about the VMS compatibility. This can be deployed alongside what you currently have. So you're not restricted to necessarily being on a certain software platform. You can deploy it along with it, and you can just put in a camera or two. But positioning wise, we'd put it somewhere where you have people coming in and out of the building where you can get a nice clear shot of their face.
Great. So another question here around, essentially they're saying, hear about this within kind of city surveillance, et cetera. But have you seen private entities deploy this type of technology? And what were the drivers behind that?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to some of the cases in the video, and that you can use this just to make sure, make employees' lives easier, whether it's something you integrate with like a gate or access, or just getting into an area where employees are supposed to be and not the general public. It's almost a softer way to let people in, or through a position, as opposed to, traditional card access. But obviously, privacy is very important, and so you could be using this, within your organization for your employees. We also have technologies we can deploy that can protect privacy for people. Whether that's intelligently blurring people's faces, masking out areas where you don't want to be recording. But there's lots of technologies we have around that, and just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's good. Are there any school districts currently using this product?
Right now, the products we're looking at, relatively new. So we do have it available that we're testing with and working with. We have not deployed this at a school yet. There's been interest and questions on it. But again, I think that it's something I think people are still trying to wrap their heads around. That's something we have here, we have available, and we could help determine if that's a good fit.
Yeah, and I think if we look at a national scale, while Parallel may not have done any school districts yet, I think that there are case studies from around the country of school districts that have used this type of technology. Last question here: facial recognition with mask use and COVID. Does this diminish the effectiveness of the facial recognition technology?
I would say, yeah, definitely, absolutely. It's an obstruction towards the images it's going to be comparing it to. But as I said, if you have a reference image of a person with a mask, that accuracy reading is going to go up.
Great. All right. Thanks, Josh. Really appreciate the insights. And as we're looking at facial recognition, we have it set up in our lab. We have used the technology and would love to get demos associated with the technology to be able to walk to the specifics as to how it's set up, how it's used, that whole structure. It's really a great opportunity to learn. And I think as the years go on, we're going to see more and more facial recognition deployed, whether that's within the kind of municipality world or within private entities. You know, the other thing I've heard a lot about is VIP type of treatment for faces that are recognized, being able to say, okay, this person's walked into the building, and then be able to respond to that. So thanks, Josh. We really appreciate it. If you have more questions related to facial recognition, please reach out to one of our salespeople and they can help you navigate those waters.